Bang, bang, Niner gang. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet Rets. Ben, you must be flying high right now, brother. How you feeling?
It is just so beautiful to me to be advancing to the Super Bowl. I worked so hard all season long to provide the best possible stats for my team, and I'm just pumped, dude. I'm so stoked. I'm so excited for the Super Bowl.
That's great, dude. Shout out again to Ryan for joining us last week. I know on the recording it kind of had a little audio issues. We figured out kind of the solution and we will work on that moving forward. But it was, again, Ryan, thank you for joining the pod. It was a lot of fun having you here.
Yes.
So with that being said, let's break down. We got a bunch of different topics today. We're going to come back to the NBA a bit. I know it's been a while. But with that, we're going to start with the game that mattered. So, Ben, you guys advanced, survived, and advanced. How were you feeling in what kind of was an up and down game there?
It was like the true tale of two halves that I've ever seen, honestly. It was so at halftime. Well, let me start by saying this. For everybody who's listening, like Marcos, Ryan, and I, we have a group chat that we're always talking to each other, anything sports, anything in general. We're just kind of always talking. And that day I went pretty radio silent. I think I said a few things when I woke up and I was like, I'm super pumped, excited, blah, blah, blah. And then I did something super corny and I'm like, all right, I'm going in my dark hours. And I just muted the chat, didn't text anybody, like not even my family. It was just radio silent on my end and I was locked in. I went upstairs. I did a super corny edge of the bed, like little motivational, like meditation. Like it was a whole thing. And then game starts and the Lions score right out the gate. And I was like, I actually expected that. That was on par for the game. I expected it to be a high scoring game. And then the Niners got all the way down the field to about the 30-yard line, tried to kick a field goal. And once again, Jake Moody, the third round pick in the NFL draft of last year, he missed another one. And that was one of my concerns going into the playoffs that we discussed. And it made me sick to my stomach.
I was wondering. I
was pissed. And I didn't want to give like you or Ryan any of that, like, you know, any of the sense of like how genuinely pissed off I was that he missed that field goal. So I didn't say anything. So then, you know, the Lions go back down and then they make it 14-0. And then we made it 14-7. And then they made it 21-7. And then Brock Purdy throws an interception and they make it 24-7. Now, that interception I do want to talk about for a second.
Okay.
It wasn't a highlight, this is awesome. Okay. The media has been roasting Brock week in and week out all season long on any little mistake he makes, not just fans of the NFL, but the media as well. This was not a highlight of the game. Thank you, because he played a phenomenal game, and I'll get into that in a second. But this interception was another one of those scenarios. It really wasn't him. He got hit on his throwing hand as he was throwing, and so it forced the ball to be thrown a little bit short, and it was right into the hands of another Lions player. So, pressure in his face. A lot of the times you put any pressure in any quarterback's face, and they're more likely to make a mistake. Now, pressure and you hit their throwing hand, you're likely to get a turnover. And this is one of those scenarios where you're in the NFC Championship game. You better damn well be taking anything that you get, right? Mm-hmm. And this was one of those scenarios where the Niners made a mistake. They didn't block properly. The Lions got to our quarterback as he was throwing, and they capitalized off of that. Now, they went down the field, and they could only get a field goal off. So I made it 24-7 at halftime. I was actually pretty happy that all they could get was a field goal there because...
Yeah, that was the tough decision he had to make.
At that point, if it was 28-7 going into halftime, personally, the Niners don't come back from that. I know the score that we won by, and I know that the Niners were up by 10 going into the Lions' last drive, but I still don't think like 24-7 at halftime is a lot different than 28-7.
Right. That was the Cowboys Packers difference, right? They go in
Right.
there 28-7 after Dak throws the pick six, and you're like, this game's over. And like, so Dan Gamble, I think, got a lot of hate in this game for some questionable decisions, and I disagree with a lot of it. I think the only bad decision he made was the very end, because you can't help. And we'll get into that later, but I think on that drive, what was really crucial is that I agree with you that getting out of there, going into halftime with them only hitting a field goal instead of them not going for it and trying to get the touchdown was huge, because on that drive they had capitalized on a 3rd and 18 and a 3rd and 12 on the ground, and I was
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, they're doing whatever they want, and they were able to get the opportunity to only hold them to 3 there. And the Niners got the ball back at half, and obviously it didn't go the way you guys wanted to at first, so it kind of the pressure was on still. But you're right, going down 28-7 would have been bad.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it going into this week, like Gibbs and Montgomery. Was it Montgomery? I'm blanking. I think it was, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're forces to be reckoned with, and they have been all season long. They're at this point, it's safe to say they're the best running back duo in the league.
Right.
And they proved why. I mean, they were the only two, I believe, 1,000-yard rushers on the same team.
Same team,
yeah, which is awesome, and it makes sense. I mean, watching this game, like, you see just how much anger and aggression is behind every single one of their runs, whether it goes for 2 yards or it goes for 45.
Yeah.
They tore apart this Niners defense, who has been priding themselves for the last 4 years on run defense, right? And I think that in the last, I'm going to say 6 or 7 weeks, it might have been less. I actually think it might be more, if I'm being honest. The Niners have been really struggling with ground defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's more of a testament to Steve Wilks and only bringing 4 every time, and these soft coverages and just not being able to make adjustments at the right time. Mind you, this game was a little bit of a different story because he did make the adjustments that needed to happen for him to keep his job. Yes, I said that, and yes, I mean that. But yeah, so coming out of halftime, like, this was a completely different Niners team, and anybody who watched the game can attest, like, whether you're a Niners fan or not, this was, like I said, the most tale of two teams as it gets, right? You see a team in the Niners who in the first half couldn't stop a toddler from running 10 yards, right? To all of a sudden nothing for the Lions is working. I mean, mind you, there were plays that were getting them down the field, but then the real tale came on the other side of it, which Marcos kind of alluded to, and that's Dan Campbell living and dying by his 4th down conversion rate, which all season long has been successful for him. But there's something to be said, and this is kind of the point I wanted to get across, where all week long, Marcos, you've probably been seeing the same, like, they've been killing Dan in terms of, like, why wouldn't you kick a field goal here? Why wouldn't you kick a field goal here? And it's like, okay, all season long, I mean, when I look at the Lions' record, they're 14-6. They've won a lot of really close games this year. They've also blown out some teams, but there's games in there where, let's just say 4 games, they don't go for it on 4th down, and they don't get a touchdown here or there, which is the case. I did kind of look it up. I don't have it to my notes right now, but they could have lost 4 more games. They're a completely different team at that point.
Right.
Like, it's a different style team. It's a different record. They're not, the seed they are, and they're probably not in the NFC Championship without going for those chances.
They were 80%. They were converting from 4th and 3 or shorter. They were converting 80% of the time.
That's it.
And that was like the Eagles of last year, where they were just like, if it's 4th and short, you're going for it, and it doesn't matter, and you're not going to stop it. And that was the issue. So, and let's touch on that just a little bit, because the first one that was questionable was that 4th and 2 when they were on your 30, and it was almost like this is their put away opportunity. I think it was their first drive of the second half. They could have gone up in this spot. They could have gone up 31-10 or, put up a field goal. But that was the decision, right? They were right around their 20 to 25 yard line. So the narrative that I think people forgot is that their kicker, despite, all of your kicker's flaws, Michael Badgley is actually a lot worse.
Yeah.
Within the 40 to 49 yard range, he's averaging 54% from
Which is
there.
terrible.
So exactly, that's terrible. So when and in a game in this spot, you want to try and get points. So this is the calculated decision you had to make, and you can't anticipate a Josh Reynolds drop just in his hands. He drops it, and then later on in the third quarter, it's a third down, and he drops another one on a crossing route where he's wide open and has space, and they can convert and get the ball going again. And again, with the tale of two halves, it was momentum, momentum, momentum. Everything that could have went wrong for the Lions went wrong, and everything that could have went right for the Niners went right. So I wanted to talk about what went right for the Niners in this spot, because it starts, I guess, the big momentum switcher here was the 50-yard bomb that could have been intercepted, that went off the face mask of Kevin Wilder, I believe it was him, or it was on Lions safety, but it deflects off his face mask, and Ayuk made a perfect on-ball play, dove, made the catch of the game, and after that, everything just shifts. It leads to the fumble, and then it leads to the touchdown, and next thing you know, in 5 minutes, you guys are tied. So what was your feeling? Take me through your view of the immaculate deflection, I believe is what they're calling it now. So how were you in that moment when it all was going down?
I was somewhere in between disbelief and just pure rage. Because all game long nothing was working, and then when this crap works, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, it didn't feel like we were coming back at that point yet. It was still like that we're just itching for anything at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it hits his face mask, and Brandon just makes an awesome adjustment in the air,
Awesome.
catches it, and thank God for that ladybug that landed on his shoe pregame. I think it was obviously a sign of of good things to come. But yeah, when he made that play, you could kind of sense like a shift in momentum at that point, and I enjoy talking about the momentum aspect of it right now because George Kittle went on Pat McAfee's podcast last week, and one of the topics that came up was like momentum and how like nowadays analysts don't view momentum as even a thing. Like the analytics rather, like momentum isn't even a factor for them. Like it's either this or it's that, and nothing in between kind of thing. Like, and so when the momentum shifted, it just felt like something was going to happen. And obviously, kind of like what you said, we got in the end zone there. And then the fumble happened, which was just, that to me was the spot where I was like, oh, wow, like this is happening. Yeah. And
considering it happened 2 plays after that touchdown, it's it was the first play of the ensuing drive. And then, so it's like, right. Oh crap, everything's starting to come together.
So I was stoked. I wasn't even like at that point, like, we're going to win this game. No, at that point, I was just like, wow, we're back in this game. Like,
exactly.
We can make this a 0-0 ball game pretty much. And at this point, just whatever team can close it out. And that was where, we scored that touchdown, tied it up. And I was like, it's going to commercial break. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I trust this Niners team to get this done. Like, if there's a season that I've genuinely trusted this team to get a situation like this done, it's this year. I wouldn't have trusted them with any other quarterback leading up to it. I know I, going into the season, talked about Jimmy like he was the GOAT of this team, but that was just because he was the best quarterback I'd seen since, obviously,
Alex
I guess Cap, but
yeah,
Cap
right.
really wasn't it, right? Like, yeah. it's the lack of identity that we've had at that quarterback position for so long. And so Jimmy came in and made all these plays, like yada yada. I got this sense in this game after that point where I was like, wow, this team can actually get this done. And I talked a little bit of crap about Brock. I'm not gonna lie. And this was in the first half. This is when he threw the interception. And I gotta call myself out on it because he threw the interception. They show him like a picture of him and he's on the bench and he's just got his head down and he's kind of like, going through it. And I said something out loud. I was like, I'm trying to remember exactly what I said. I think it was like, I talked all this talk about you all year long for you to take a crap like this in a game like this. And I was just kind of like going through the motions, right? I was just frustrated because I'm like, all year long, I've been hyping this kid up, saying how he's like a really good quarterback and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league and he lays a goose egg.
Right.
But he made me eat my words, man, because right after we tied it up, this guy he proved everything that I've kind of been saying all year long. And that's that I trust the ball in his hands and I trust him to make the plays when it matters. And he led this team. I know the guys, the receivers, Christian McCaffrey, like ultimately the ball gets in their hands and they make a play, right? But in a game like this, with the magnitude this game had, to be able to put the ball in these guys' hands after struggling an entire first half with no momentum, to go out and lead basically 2 game-winning drives at that point, right? It was to go up with the field goal and then go up by the extra touchdown to get up 10 points. Like, the way he used his legs, the way he put the ball in his playmakers' hands, the way he led this team was every reason why I've backed this kid all year long. And it was awesome to see. I am ecstatic that in his second year, he's led us to 2 NFC championship games. And now in his second year, led us to a Super Bowl where we've got as much of a chance against the Chiefs than they do against us.
Agreed. It's and again, we can see where the difference in opinion is on how people view players, because if you watch some of those plays that Brock made, like the 3rd and 4 where he's throwing it across his body into traffic and Jawan makes an insane play, they're criticizing Purdy for that play, like, oh, that's a play that just kind of worked out for him, right? But then you watch the Ravens and Chiefs and Mahomes is being twisted. That was a crazy play. He's twisted and he throws it very similarly. Now it's more not like across his body, but he's getting just wrecked and he throws it to Travis Kelce and they're like, oh, look at how good Mahomes is. So, credit to Brock for taking those risks and realizing at the end of the day, he knows it's a bad decision in the book, but it's a play that makes a difference. And his ability to escape the pocket, and he ran for 48 yards. It would have been 50 if he didn't, take that kneel down at the end. But
yeah,
like, you watch plays that you're like, crap, that was a back-breaking run by Mahomes. Oh, crap, Purdy just had like 2 or 3 back-breaking runs. And you can tell he doesn't run a lot. Like, he hasn't run a lot because he doesn't know how to slide yet. But that was, there was a couple times where I was like, dude, get down, please get down, let's get down. And I was, but I was also thinking in those moments, I was like, oh, crap, like, those are the plays that can carry a team to the distance. Those are the plays you're going to need to make. And we're going to talk all about Super Bowl next week. This is more of a recap week, but
yeah,
I will admit that Purdy does need to come out and play perfectly, but plays like these, like, will come a long way. And I was very impressed with what I saw. And I think Rich Eisen posted like a stat for his second half that he had a second half that literally nobody else has ever had, where it was like complete 80% of his passes and throw for 150 plus yards, and had the touchdown. They didn't even include the rushing in there. And he had one of the best second halves in playoff history. And they also led the largest comeback in NFC championship game history.
It tied the record.
Tied the record for 17. So
we tied our own record, which is hilarious.
That's right.
But yeah.
So it was 17 points. And again, the narrative on the Niners all year has been Kyle Shanahan can't coach from behind. They can't make plays when they're behind.
Yeah.
And in two of the biggest games of the season for the Niners, they have come back and just shaken that narrative, which must
Yeah.
make you
So,
feel a whole lot better.
no, and there's two things here that, yes, that's like all year long, you and I talked about the narrative being, can the Niners come back? Can the Niners come back when they're down, when they're down, when they're down? Like Kyle Shanahan's record when he's down in the fourth quarter, blah, blah, blah. Like it was all these like, what ifs, can they, if they. And in the first two playoffs games, like they've gone through the ringer when it comes to those scenarios. Like they went from essentially running the regular season in the NFC to then being the losing team for majority of the game in the first two games of the playoffs, and then coming back and finding a way to win, which is what those great teams do. And it's just flipping that narrative. Now, speaking of flipping a narrative, the second thing I want to get at is Cam Newton, this guy who's been on the couch for the last few seasons.
I saw this.
He talked about Purdy being one of the, probably the 10th best player on the team, which I think I actually kind of get where he's coming from. Like when I was going through the counting. I think
Right.
I got to about 7, and I was like, he might be the
You're
7th best.
you're pushing it a bit. Like, yeah, at that
Right.
point.
Yeah, you're starting to like you're really accounting for a lot of things here. But
Mm-hmm.
what he really said that irked me wasn't that. It was that he said Brock Purdy isn't a game changer. He doesn't change the game. He
Right.
still manages the game. And you just said something that adds to my point here that I'm about to make, and that's that Purdy took a risk in that third down throw to Juwan Jennings. And personally, a game manager, in my opinion, is a quarterback or a player in general that, I guess we're talking quarterbacks, so I'll just use quarterbacks. A game manager is a quarterback that doesn't take a risk, right?
Right.
It's a quarterback that does the dink and dunk, that makes the the first read rather than, oh, the first read's open. What is it, the second and third? Okay. You know what I mean? Like it's taking the first thing that's available to you, the easiest thing that'll just push the ball 5 to 6 yards maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Purdy in this game in the second half was a game changer. And so I completely disagree with what Cam Newton said. You look at Purdy in the second half, he took risks with his leg, with his arm. Like he understood the situation that his team was in, and he took it into his hands to make sure this team won that game. And that's what a game changer does, not a game manager. A game manager would not make those plays. You wouldn't
Right.
use his legs the way that Brock did. He wouldn't throw across his body the way that Brock did.
I think this is the season where like the whole game manager narrative is kind of starting to lose its juice, because even so, again, these guys are facing each other, and it's a fair time to put these kind of styles to comparison. So Patrick Mahomes was asked on the podium after the game, just about this game, and he's like, oh, I think I was just managing the game really well. I was trying to game manage, not turn the ball over. I knew it was going to be tough. We just had to make the right plays and just try to make everything work. He said, I tried to play as clean as I can.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the guy who we're going to be considering the GOAT here in just a few years. It's going to be imminent. And what he did to win that game was manage the game. Don't turn the ball over. Let your defense get its stops and just keep the ball moving. Take what the defense gives you. I think the whole game manager thing is nonsense. I think having a game manager is crucial, and having a game manager who can make plays that elevates the team is all you can ever ask for in the NFL, especially nowadays. You got guys like Josh Allen who take too many risks, and Jalen Hurts who turned the ball over, Dak last year. Like when guys fail to manage the game properly, you're gonna set your team down. You're gonna carry them down. So
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you. I think for me though, like in how the game manager, like the definition of a game manager is viewed, um, or at least, how it's taken. Like a team like the Niners, who was down 17 points with a genuine game manager, they wouldn't come back and win that game. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm like, yeah, Patty Mahomes said he just managed the game really well, but Brock couldn't honestly go up on that podium and say I managed the game really well, because if he managed the game, they wouldn't have come back and won that game. Like he
Right.
had to take those risks to help his team get to that comeback and then ultimately get the win. Like, and that's where the game manager like title for Brock should be completely thrown out the window, because not only did he do it in front of everybody that has ever talked crap about him, but he did it on the biggest stage of his career at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was a time to do it, it was then. And it was just awesome to see. It was a ton of fun. I'm stoked because, let me put it this way, and we'll talk about it next week.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose the Super Bowl, it's going to be heartbreaking. Okay.
For sure.
But
obviously,
but I have a lot more faith, having watched Brock Purdy in the last 2 weeks go up against Green Bay and go up against the Lions and do the things that he did. I have a lot more faith in him now for the rest of his career than I did at the end of the regular season. I have faith that this guy will bring the Niners a Super Bowl, whether it's this year or it's in his future. Like, it's going to happen. He's in his second freaking year, man, and he's going into the Super Bowl.
Third
I
youngest
know
QB.
the guys he has around him, but holy freaking crap, man. Like, and he's doing it while being the most humble kid. And he's got the most haters, probably other than Travis Kelce, in the league. Like, it's crazy. It's awesome to see. I was stoked. So ultimately, like, my final thoughts on the game. This was a great game for me to watch as a Niners fan, and also as somebody who gives up on games too quickly. I actually, like, I gotta hand it to myself. I didn't give up on that game. I knew going into halftime, like, if we came out and we got a touchdown, I'd feel like we had a really good chance. We came out and we got the field goal, and I still felt like there was a chance, but it wasn't as good, right?
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, they really needed one here. Yeah.
We really needed that touchdown. But watching this team, the resilience they had, the fight that they had, the dog, all like in that second half, just to completely shift a game the way that they did, gives me a lot of confidence going into, a week and a half from now.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
That's great. And I think another big takeaway from this game is that I loved, again, big Brock moment for him to just step up and to be a leader. I loved all the stuff that happened afterwards. He has the full respect of everybody. I love I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, but they're him and Nick Bosa having a conversation.
Yeah.
So Nick Bosa was basically asking him, he's like, how do you do it, man? Like, how do you have this confidence? Did you know you were going to be this good? And Brock was like, oh, I could have been better. And he's like, but like, how do you deal with your confidence? He's like, I was a second pick in the draft and I still struggle with confidence. He's like, dude, like, you're unbelievable. Like, it was cool. And it wasn't him like interviewing him. It was just like a genuine conversation, which I like appreciate with these teammates who kind of understand just how hard it is to get there. And George Kittle being back and just keeping they had him mic'd up a lot, so they had him talking the whole time. He knew that it was that they were going to come back, the speaking it into existence type thing. Like, the veterans, everyone that's on this team is capable of achieving the ultimate goal. And I think that it's only going to make this game more exciting. And we'll have a lot to break down next week, and we're really excited for it. But final thoughts, it was a fun game to watch. Great result for everybody. And every Super Bowl run for any team requires a little bit of magic, and that's exactly what the Niners got, was magic. So that was great to see. And yeah, so we look forward to next week. So
Did you want to talk about your curse at all? Did you want to talk about that?
So I lied to the boys in the group chat. I told them, so the whole curse, for those who weren't here last week to hear about our curse, every team that I texted for, like who I was rooting for via text, was ending up losing, or like they were struggling because I was rooting for them.
They ended up
And
losing, not just struggling. You got it
yeah,
right the first
they
time.
ended up losing because while I was texting and rooting for them. And I wore the Niners jersey, the $30 one that I got to represent for the game. And I was not, and I was hoping, I was like, I'm going to wear this Niners jersey. I don't want to curse them. I want to support them, and it's going to work. And halfway through and midway through the first half, I was like, after the first half, I was like, oh crap, like this is going to be really, really bad. And I told the boys I was wearing all blue to support the Lions. I was wearing blue pants, but I had the Niners jersey on. And, but then after the game, I was like, guess what, guys? And I sent a picture. I was like, I'm not cursed. So it's great. So now I know I
Yeah,
can wear the jersey next week and be totally cool with it.
yeah, exactly. No, I genuinely feel like Marcos went into this like, oh, I'm just gonna try and curse the Niners. That way Ben can be upset too. We can both be upset because our teams didn't make the Super
Join in
Bowl.
the
No.
misery. Yes, team content here.
No, it was cool. It was good you broke that curse because now you can actually root for the Niners because nobody wants
Exactly.
the Chiefs to win.
Right, exactly. Even though next week I'm gonna totally discuss how the Chiefs. Well, it's okay. We're gonna have fun next week. That's all I can say.
Don't make me fight you.
It's gonna be good, dude. I'm excited for this matchup. So, with that being said, any final thoughts on the Niners here before we move on?
Nah, let's move on.
So, real quick, it's not going to be a long combo here. We're going to talk about just the NFL coaching carousel in general. All the head coaching spots have been filled, and that's huge. And that means a lot of good things for teams like the Lions, teams like the Texans, who didn't lose any of their offensive or defensive coordinators. Ben Johnson staying. D'Amico Ryans has Bobby Slowick. There's a lot of good moves for the NFL next year, which is only going to make everyone just a little bit more tough. Dan Quinn got the last coaching spot, which is bad for the Cowboys, great for the Niners and the Eagles. And so Dan Quinn will be coaching the Washington Commanders. And I think, and then Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, is now in your division with the Seahawks, which I think is a very interesting one because obviously the Ravens defense did have a really good job with the Niners. That doesn't mean that the Seahawks will have that kind of success, different players, but
Right.
that system is there. So that'll be fun to watch. So, but the team that really matters in the situation is the Philadelphia Eagles, who ended up in this coaching cycle getting two solid coordinators that I honestly was not anticipating. Offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, we snagged him from the Chargers, formerly with the Cowboys as well, and he has done a lot of the things that Eagles fans have been asking for during the season. So he's going to be introducing, the Chargers ran the 8th most motion. The Eagles were dead last year, and motion's kind of an easy button to press to kind of figure out your coverage that you're going up against. And they were also nice middle of the pack, running plays under center. The Eagles never ran plays under center. So this is basically a big step up year for Jalen. And this is the first pro style offense that he's going to be running that isn't just like, oh, here, our concepts are going to get these guys in these spots and you don't have to think about anything else. So this will be a great test for our $50 million quarterback to see if he has what it takes to take that next step in processing. That's what I like about Purdy, because he's running one of the most complicated offensive system in the league. And you can just tell how much it's benefited his growth. And I want Jalen to be tested in those ways where he can learn different things. And I believe he's capable of doing those things. I think he's just a smart guy. He's going to put in the work. So it'll be a big year for him next year to figure that out. And I think Kellen Moore was an excellent hire. He's been a head coaching candidate for years and just kind of and he's still young. And I'm really excited about that. I was nervous they were going to get someone like Cliff Kingsbury, who's now with the Raiders. Sucks for them. But I'm feeling good about that. And then on the defensive side, they brought back Philly native Vic Fangio, who is he was the coach of the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins last year. And that team, again, was ravaged by injuries, and they were really a top 5 defense the second half of the year once they got Jalen Ramsey, and they were really figuring things out. And he coached, and he does a really good job against the Cowboys, which is great. So and before Vic Fangio, like, what I like about these coordinator hires is that they bring maturity and experience to this team, and they really it's a double-edged sword because it puts the pressure on Sirianni. Now there's no more excuses. You have no more scapegoats. Like, no one else is going to receive that attention. If the team does poorly, you are back to being the pure CEO head coach. Bring the culture back. Your seat's still going to be hot. You'll probably survive the year if we do poorly, but this is your time. You have no more excuses. And same for Jalen. These two have no more excuses. They dodged a lot of criticism last year, and now it's going to be all on them. But we have veteran leaders now on the offensive and defensive side who can implement their own systems. And Kellen Moore was brought in to bring his system in, so that it'll be like a touch of Sirianni, but mainly Kellen Moore, which is going to be what I'm really excited for. So obviously, I think early on we'll see, growing pains and things of that nature, but I think the team is good enough to rally around that. And in the same NFC East, the Cowboys lost Dan Quinn, and I think their defense is going to struggle a bit. And I think that continuous NFC East streak where the division champ has been different for the past 19 years now is going to continue, because I believe the Eagles will bounce back and take that NFC East crown next year. So that's just a bit of an update on that. But I'm pretty excited about that. So
yeah, there's some really good hires in there actually. And I like the way that you discuss those because I follow the same Eagles pages, just like you follow the same Niners pages I do, right? And so when the new hires came on, I just kind of scrolled through the comments and was seeing kind of what the vibe was around it. And it seems like so many Eagles fans don't recognize the style of hire that the Eagles just had. And like you kind of alluded to it with the motions, like there's a certain style of, I'm just going to look at the offensive end in this sense.
It's fine.
It was so basic and so boring.
The
same style, the same 5 offensive plays. It seemed like that the Eagles are running all year long. And you look at that squad from top to bottom on paper and you're like, how the hell are they only running these plays? And it makes you think, like, how much better could they be with a different schematic? Like, and that's from that sense, looking at the motion and looking at taking some snaps under center and like just kind of changing it up. And yeah, especially like the movement, like you said, like getting to know the coverage that you're going up against. It's a great opportunity to grow your $50 million quarterback. Like, you don't pay that guy that much money to run some simplistic offense, right?
Exactly.
Like, you pay him because you're taking a chance on a guy who you have a lot of faith in to run an offense at a very high level. So give him a chance to run an offense at a really high level. And I think that the Eagles have done a really good job in these last 2-3 weeks of just setting themselves up for at least a good shot at some, rebuilding success. It's not a deep rebuild by any means, you know what I mean? But it's a rebuild in terms of how they're going to be running this team.
Exactly.
And I do believe that Sirianni is a really good head coach. I don't like the guy. I don't like his attitude. I think he lacks a lot of humble nature, but maybe that comes with, winning as much as he has early on, right? But there's no denying, like, he can absolutely run a locker room. He can run a team. Like, keeping him was great. Adding the offensive coordinator that you did was phenomenal. This team's got a lot to look forward to in the next year, and it's going to be a bounce back year. And obviously the Cowboys are going to continue being the Cowboys. So it's wide open for you guys to take it over again and keep that streak going.
Right, exactly. And again, what made me feel a lot better about keeping Sirianni was the way everybody kind of went to bat for him. Made me feel a lot better. I was like, okay, it didn't seem like he lost the locker room at all. It was a team collective collapse, and it could have been an experience. Now with Fangio and Moore, we're not going to have these substitution issues. We're not going to have it. And with Fangio has a lot of disciples. It's kind of like a Kyle Shanahan on offense in the sense. Um, and you find that it's a lot better to have the guy who created the system running
Yes.
running the offense or the defense, because they know exactly how to have these answers versus someone's like, oh, here's the style of scheme. Oh, but what happens if A, B, or C happens? Now we have a guy who can prepare for A, B, and C. And
Right.
Kellen Moore, last year the Chargers weren't so great offensively, even with Herbert, but he's had 2 top 5 offenses with the Cowboys with Dak. He's had
Yeah.
established quarterbacks. And I think last year was a weird year. And I think the weapons over here in Philly are just a little bit better than what they got over there in LA. So I I look forward to just the culture change, and I'm excited to get some veteran leadership for the coaching staff that has had an overhaul. We have the Seahawks defensive coordinator as our defensive line coach now, so it's like we're getting experienced people in the building who can offer just a better culture, which is what I'm really excited for. So who knows exactly what that means? The Eagles were an 11-6 team last year, so you know if we're anywhere in that range again, we're going to be a playoff team. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one more thing too, again, looking at the offensive end, like under Kellen Moore, his consistent scheme of just keeping motions going and so on, like he's so good at keeping a defense on their toes and like constantly adjusting. And that was one thing that, again, kind of building off what I said and what you've been saying is the Eagles running the same plays. You're not fooling anybody and you're not keeping them on their toes. Like you're not making them, get up for a certain play and actually make an adjustment to stop something. They're just stopping the same thing over and over again. So it's a good it's a good hire. There's a lot to look forward to in the next season. And obviously there's going to be some moves in the off season as well. I'm sure, players, you're going to add some players. There might be some retirings in Cox and Kelsey. We'll see for sure. But if they come back for another season, like there could be something huge here. There could be another Super Bowl run. Who knows?
So yeah, no, I agree. I think the Eagles are going to have to make a lot of moves, and they have the wonderful thing is they're not so bad in the cap, and they got moves to make. So I'm excited for how the draft's going to go, or if we're going to get picks and maybe make a trade. We'll see. Kind of prefer that we go younger because I'm tired of trading for old vets that just don't work out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Let's just get some young guns in here, get fresh legs, and just see how that works. It worked really well for the Chiefs. So I just, I'm excited. That's all I can say. I feel a lot better than I did when we lost at the Bucks after that day. I just feel so much better. We rebounded as well as any team could have given our situation. So
Definitely.
So with that being said, that's enough about the Eagles. Let's transition into some NBA. So let's talk about our Kings. It's been a little bit. We are at the 46 game mark, and we are 29-17, which is literally exactly where we were last season at 29-17. And I think this is interesting because it doesn't feel the same, but it also does at the same time. But it also illustrates how much kind of the league around us got better, because we're sitting at the 5th seed, but we could be the 9th seed and if we lose like 3 in a row. But then now the top 4 seeds are kind of separating themselves from the rest of the pack. So I think, we're destined to be in anywhere between the 5 to the 8th seed, depending on how depending on trade deadline, depending on all of that. So I'll start with you. Let's give a midseason grade for the Kings just past midseason. What would you have them as, and just why? What are you feeling?
So, when I look at the season from a feeling standpoint, it feels a lot worse than it actually is. When I look at the standings, we're 5th in the West right now, behind the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Clippers, and the Nuggets. Behind us are the Suns actually they're tied with us now, thanks to last night. And then we got the Pelicans, the Mavericks, and then the Lakers and the Jazz. And then the rest of the teams really don't matter. And the rest of the teams include the Warriors, which is always phenomenal when they don't have anything to do with the playoff picture. But looking at our standings in the West and just kind of the teams around us and teams that have beaten us, I'm feeling pretty good because with taking into account some of the teams that have had our number all year long, we're probably not going to see them in the playoffs.
The only
Just
team
in
I'm scared
terms
of is
of
the Clippers.
right. And I mean, we'll see them for sure if we make it that far. But like from a matchup standpoint, we've lost to the Pelicans in every single game. And we're the 5th seed, they're the 7th seed. The odds of us playing each other in the first round is probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're probably going to see a team like the Thunder. We could see the Clippers. I actually think we're more likely to see the Timberwolves or the Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
So I genuinely believe in a 7-game series, fully healthy, both squads, we could beat the Timberwolves. Fully healthy, both squads, we could beat Denver. I really do believe that. And I definitely think we could take it to the Thunder.
Oh, I think we would rock the Thunder. And again, that's just based off of what we have. But regular season's different. It's always different.
Absolutely. But, they have this core squad prior to the trade deadline has experience in a heated, close, fun playoff series like that went 7 games. So there's a lot of experience in that one series alone that some players don't ever get. And looking at that Thunder squad for sure, like they haven't seen much playoffs. They're a really young team. So if I had to grade the Kings season based on everything that I just discussed, for as frustrated as I've been, I'm actually going to give them a B, which isn't great, but it isn't terrible. Because I look at the season and I'm like, it's just to feel the way we've been feeling like we're struggling day in and day out, like game in and game out, and to be kind of going through some injury woes early on and to still be 27-19, it might be more of a testament to the suffering that we've gone through the past 16, 17 years. But this season doesn't feel like a complete wash by any means. And I mean, to be 5th in the Western Conference, I don't think we're going to go lower than 7. We shouldn't. I think we're 6th at worst.
Agreed.
But, this team has felt like an F-rated team at times, like the way that they've shown up for certain games. I mean, when I look at the game against Memphis the other night where they had like 8 available players to play due to injury, and one guy who was starting was on a 2-way contract, and I don't even remember his name, and they definitely didn't have a picture of him. Like he was that irrelevant to the team. And they took it to us through 3.5 quarters. Like it's frustrating to have games like that where it feels like it's like looking at the Kings and talking to the Kings, it's like, you guys still haven't proved anything. You didn't even win that playoff series. I know it was fun. I know it was electric. Yeah, we got back. Yeah, you broke the curse, but y'all didn't win crap yet.
That's what I've been saying.
Win a playoff series, and then you might be able to do some of the things you're doing or feeling like, and again, this is from a fan perspective. Obviously, they're probably not going into a game being like, oh, like, we're just going to win this and yada, yada. But I'm pretty happy with the team, but I'm also a little frustrated. I think Mike can be a lot better, and I have a rant for him eventually, but I need to put it all together and genuinely like reflect on my thoughts, because he's still the best coach since Rick Adelman to roll through Sacramento, and that's not close. So I can't be too mad with him. But what about you?
I thought you were going to be a lot tougher on them, to be honest, but I agree and share your sentiment. I was going to give them a B, and I've been saying this all year. I've been kind of consistent with it. They were going to continue to stay where they were at and just kind of be what they were going to be with this group. And again, the internal development, the plan that we have is working. Like Fox took a step this year. Domas has taken a step this year. Keegan has taken a step this year. All of their stats have improved. And what's letting this team down is the guys we have around them are not contributing at the level that we had hoped. We thought, last year's Kevin Huerter was going to still be here and contribute 17 points a game, and he's been up and down. HB, for the 71 points in a 2-game span he put up the past week.
Yeah.
He's very non-existent at times. And the bench, as great as they can be sometimes, as much as they can uplift this team, has also been equally inconsistent and sloppy and turnovers and 3 happy. Like, there are good things and bad things that I've noticed, and the bad thing is that we give up too easily sometimes, and I think we're missing a little bit of that grit that we had last year when we were still trying to prove it. And that's what we were I was at least worried about going into the season, is like the Memphis Grizzlies syndrome. Is like you advance a bit, you improve, and then you start getting confident, and then but you still haven't earned anything yet. And in this league, it's unforgiving. It's 82 games, you still got to prove it the whole time. And we did really well in the in-season tournament when those games really mattered, so that increased my confidence for when the playoffs do come with the experience that we have now. I do believe, especially if we matched up against a team like the Thunder specifically, we beat them in all the in-season tournament matchups without Fox for one of those games. And
Yeah.
I just think that we match up really well against them. We're like their Pelicans to how they are to us. And I just think that we would just be able to outpace them in a playoff game, especially in our arena. It'd just be great. But I do anticipate if we match up against a team like the Clippers, that it would be much more difficult and just a crappy draw for them being a 4th place team. I kind of I don't know how I feel about that. So it's just, there's a lot of factors that makes me feel the way I do about this team. And I give them a B because I know they can be better. And there's a ways to go to get what we want. And that's going to have to come in either the form of a free agent signing in the offseason or a trade now. So let's talk about some of that, because the trade rumors are going wild. We have 1 week left. Trade deadline's going to get real rampant. The only major trades have been the OG Anunoby trade and the Pascal Siakam trade. Those were the ones that made their rounds.
Well, and the one today that was Steven Adams for Victor Oladipo. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah.
2 injured players that aren't going to play,
Yeah.
which is great. So, but hey, the Rockets, the Grizzlies gets picks out of it, so that's cool too.
Yeah.
So there's a couple trade targets that I kind of had in mind, and I'm still on the Kuzma train. I think that Kuzma would be a great addition, but the question is Washington really willing to get rid of him or trade for him? That part I don't know. So if I were to go more bargain bin deals here, the players that I believe are like gettable, I would have my list be Alex Caruso of the Chicago Bulls, Dorian Finney-Smith of the Brooklyn Nets, and potentially one of the Hawks guys, like if they were really willing to get rid of like Bogey or somebody. But at least in realistic standpoints, we either need a good guard, despite all, the weird part about it is that we've been having guards this whole time. But we're only playing really like 2 or 3 of them right now. It's Foxy, Monk, and Herter have been receiving the majority of the attention, and Davion has been getting more of a run lately. But Keon, Colby, and Duarte have just been chilling on the bench consistently now over the past few weeks. So it's like, we have all these guards and we're not using them. Let's get a guard that can contribute. I wish we had like a true backup point guard, like a TJ McConnell. And Malik Monk, as great as of a 2-man pick and roll runner, guy that he is, I'd love to have him have the ball less and contribute off the ball and just kind of get more involved that way. Because
I think he would be more effective in that role.
Monk is great, but he doesn't need the ball in his hands every single possession. If he can get around, have somebody else who can get him open versus him having to create everything, he's turned into a point guard at this point, but that's just not who he is. And I don't, we shouldn't ask him of that. And I think that's made us struggle in a few of these games.
That's kind of the role we've like asked him to fill. And that was why I wanted us to incorporate him into the starting role and just kind of see how it went, because for that reason alone, like, he wouldn't be asked to handle the ball as much when you've got Domas with you as well as Foxy. And like, you see that when Mike Brown decides, and it's a decision, to close the game with that lineup. Like, you see him be more effective because he's a little more off ball and he has all these backdoor cuts. And then when he's backdoor and he throws down 2 in a row, then they start adjusting on defense. And then, it leaves Keegan wide open. It leaves Fox wide open. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. So And again, I don't know. At the end of the day, I still believe that this iteration of this team can win a playoff series.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, the league is about making moves. You watch the trades, the big trades that some of these teams made. Indiana getting Pascal, that's worked for them. The Knicks getting OG, they've won 8 in a row. Like they are consistently that it just shows that if you trade for a winning player, it will pay dividends. And I think a guy like if we're gonna get like a glue guy, a Dorian Finney-Smith does great. Uh, Alex Caruso is great. Kuzma would be kind of a potential game changer, but it is still a relative unknown on how that would all pan out. So that's just kind of how I feel on that front.
So out of those three guys, because interestingly enough, those are my top three to go get. And I have an order in which to get them. I'm curious who would be your like number one go get out of those, and then who's your number two and number three?
In this order, Kuzma, Caruso, Dorian Finney-Smith. That'd be my order. And the reason I have it in that order is because Kuzma is the high value alpha guy who can, if you bring him into your team, he can be your anywhere between your first to third guy, maybe even fourth. So the stats, he's played with stars before. Last year he played with Beal and Porzingis, and he did a really good job sharing the load with those guys. And he obviously won on a championship team in the bubble with the Lakers, and they did a really good, he was the third or fourth guy there. I believe he's capable of playing on a championship team and elevating a team. And people were worried about, oh, can he be bought in? This guy wants to win, and I can understand, like, he probably likes being the guy in Washington, but it wouldn't hurt to, go to a team that's better, a culture that's better, and you get to play with guys who are around your age. You're in that timeline. He's 28, and he's on a very nice contract for a player who has a lot of money. His contract is 4 years, $100 million, but it declines every single year. So we could keep him and still sign our guys, still pay Keegan money, still pay De'Aaron money. We already signed Domas, so we're good there. And it would be a medium risk, high reward potential for him. Now, when you get Caruso and Dorian Finney-Smith, they both operate under the same kind of assumption for me, where they're plug and play guys. You can put him in whatever role you ask him to, and they would be the defensive stud that can help Keegan, for example. Now, Kuzma can probably he probably wouldn't be the level of defender that they are, but I think that with his size, him and Keegan would at least be able to provide some switchability on bigger forwards. Like if we were to match up against the Clippers, then Keegan wouldn't be forced to have to try and guard Paul George and Kawhi at the same time. It could be both. But then Dorian Finney-Smith takes that role if we brought him. Caruso can handle any of the more physical guard matchups. So that's kind of why I like all three, because I think fit-wise, I think they can all fit here. So that's kind of where I would go with that one.
Yeah,
So.
no, I 100% agree. And it's the biggest thing to focus on for the rest of the year is fit. Because this team is not lacking chemistry per se. What they're lacking is just kind of the personnel to get it done. You see the holes that are missing, where it needs to be filled. And the best thing to do that is with guys who are already, kind of fitting that style of play. So trading for that, winning player, making a winning move like that, for the Kings should be an absolute target for them, especially if you want to take that leap from good to great. I mean, Mike Brown talked about how difficult of a jump that is, and you never really see it, especially like as Kings fans, we never saw that because we couldn't even get from bad to good for
Right,
the
we
longest
thought
time.
that was great.
Right, and so we made that jump from bad to good, and we were like, well, the jump from bad to good took 16 years, so the jump from good to great shouldn't take but like a year or two. Well, it's actually seeming to look this way, like it's gonna be a jump, and it's gonna take like all the right pieces to get it done. And I mean, it kind of forces you as a fan and just anybody who kind of pays attention to the league and top teams. Like you look at teams like the Celtics, teams like Milwaukee, and then in the Western Conference, teams like Denver. And I know they're not first in the West right now, but they've been one of the top teams in the West now for almost 5-6 years. You look at teams like that and you're like, where do they get that success? Oh, well, if you look at 5 years ago, they had pretty much the same core, and they've just built around that core. Especially
Right.
if I'm talking about Denver, I'll stay on their topic for a second. They added a season or two ago, Aaron Gordon, who was almost like their missing link at that point. And I know they'd made other additions, but he was like that last little bit that they needed to make that title run and ultimately get it. And it was like, it goes to show, like, experience, keeping your core together and building that experience is key. And then once those guys have that rapport and everything's going well for them, putting the finishing touches around them and on that team is just, that's that next step. So it feels like that jump from good to great, it may not happen this year, regardless of who we get at that trade deadline. I think we can still, as a good team, win a playoff series. Will we win a second one? I don't know.
Ends
Will
on
we go to the
matchup.
finals? I don't know. Probably
Yeah.
not. But this team has done some things this year and last year that we didn't think they were capable of doing. So, it's kind of a toss up in the air. But that jump from good to great, it's going to come with time. And
Yeah.
that's, I'm saying that out loud to Kings fans, but I'm also saying that out loud for myself, because it's a realization of just how difficult it is and what it takes to be a great team in this league. I mean, those top teams, man, that core has been the same for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And again, it just shows how tough the league has gotten and continues to get. And it shows that 2 all NBA players don't even make the All-Star roster this year, even though the team has improved. And it's disappointing.
wild.
It is wild, right? So Domas and De'Aaron got snubbed from the All-Star game in favor of Karl Towns and Paul George. And again, it could have been one or the other. I honestly think De'Aaron kind of played himself out of the All-Star consideration lately, but Domas has been a force, especially from December on. He's led the league in triple doubles from that time
Domas is the
period.
second best center in the league right now.
Yeah, and if you want to argue, obviously maybe at least top 4, like you got Joker and Joel, and I couldn't argue anyone else at that point in terms of just what they offer for their team. And Domas is having a career year, and Fox is as well. But again, it just kind of goes to show that Sacramento will never really get that attention until they either bring more stars on the team or just are the number 1 seed or number 2 seed. They didn't even get the proper respect when they were a 2 or 3 seed last year. They're like, oh, this is a great story, but we're still being overlooked, and that'll be fine, because honestly, I find a benefit in not having anyone All-Star weekend outside of Keegan participating in the Rising Stars. That's our boy. But like, Fox and Domas get rest. And at this stage, with how much of a load they've been carrying, we're going to come out even more fresh in the All-Star game. And Fox came out and said he doesn't care about the All-Star, which is great, because that's not what matters. It is about winning championships.
Yeah, and that's kind of the nice thing about the team, is they realize the ultimate goal. I do got to point out, Sabonis missed out on $1.3 million by not making it to the All-Star.
That sucks.
And I look at it from a perspective of somebody who likes to make money, as we all do. Like, if I was playing, having a career year, and knowing that I'm one of the best centers in the league, to be snubbed out of it for the guys that made it. Not that the guys that made it aren't bad, but it's just, it makes you kind of realize, like, I'd be thinking, is it because of the team I'm on? Is it because, the Kings haven't done crap for the last however many years? Like, I'd start really kind of looking at the team I'm on and wondering, like, is this home for me? But I don't think we have to worry about that with Sabonis, because, you kind of just said it, like, the goal is winning and ultimately winning a championship. And this team, I mean, yeah, they've really only won for a season now, a season and a half, but they've already discussed winning a championship. And so that's definitely a goal for them. It's a goal going into every season at this point. So not making an All-Star probably isn't too much sweat for either one of those guys. I think they're definitely more concerned with getting, to the big game, the big games, but also making that an all NBA roster, which I think Sabonis will find himself on an all NBA roster again at the end of the year. It'll probably be the second one again, but I don't think Foxy will play himself onto an all NBA roster this year. I think unless he makes some serious moves.
Unless he continues to play well. I mean, and that's hard, especially with the guards. I mean, it's hard not to play favorites because they always want to favor Steph. SGA is
Right.
undeniable and Luka is undeniable. So it's like, that's so hard. Like, who are you really going to put in that third spot? Who does the most? And that's what kind of happened with this All-Star. They rewarded Kat and Paul George for being on more successful teams this year. If the Kings were a third or a second seed, I guarantee you they would have been in that All-Star spot because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the 1 and 2 seed. So it's tough. And I don't know how that's going to affect in the All NBA. They were the 3rd seed last year and they received 3rd team honors. So I just wonder if they are the 5th or 6th seed. But I mean, it doesn't make any sense either because LeBron and AD are all stars and they're the 9th seed. So it's
and Kat has made previous All Stars when his team was completely out of the playoff picture this far into the season.
Yeah.
Like I feel you. I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that has any weight. I think it's just genuinely the NBA, the league, the fans, the coaches, they don't yet respect this team the way that us fans want them to respect us. Like, we recognize how good this team can be and really is. It's just a matter of showing up day in and day out, game in and game out. But it's just, yeah, it's a frustrating situation for sure. Looking around those All-Stars and going, really, our boys aren't in it.
Mm-hmm.
But All-Star Weekend really isn't that great anyway,
Yeah,
whatever.
It's not even that exciting
bored
anymore.
of it anyway, yeah.
So, any final thoughts about kind of how we feel? I know they're in the middle of a road trip. They got Indiana and then Chicago coming up. So we got the Caruso tryout. This will be good. Are you feeling confident? Like, I know we're at a B. Do you think they can raise that grade for you by the end of the year?
I think I'm nervous, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous to see how the trade deadline goes.
That'll be the big deal.
I don't want us to settle. Like, I would hate to see, just as an example, like where we trade Kevin Huerter or Davion or any of these guys for a piece that just won't affect us that well. Like, I don't want picks, really. I want a player that we can lean on for the future. I don't want to see us settle in that case. And I'm a little bit nervous looking at this team for the rest of the season because to be honest with you, it's kind of declined in a way considering how we started the season. And maybe it's just a feeling, but it seems like
I get that.
it seems like this team has gone a bit backwards as of the last 20 games. And so I do feel nervous now. I want to see them get on the up and up again and string together, a 5, 6, 7 game win streak and kind of get their mojo back, get some swagger back. I want to see that ball zipping around again. Like, I don't want to see us living and dying by the 3 ball because it's not working as much as, we're a winning team technically with record. It's not a winning recipe with the guys that we have. I know,
right?
3 ball can be a winning recipe. Look at the Warriors, right? But it's this team, this Kings team, does something very special when we're able to get to the rim to start a game off. It's like running the ball with Christian McCaffrey to start a Niners game.
Right.
When they have to respect Foxy on the inside and Domas is making his layups,
yeah,
to then be able to kick it out to Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, Trey Lyles, like dudes who can freaking light it up at any given time. Like, that's the recipe for success. Not Foxy dribbling down and first 6 seconds into the shot clock taking a 3 when he could get all the way to the rim. And that's, I think, where a lot of my frustration has come from this early part of the season.
I do also have one more because I thought about this too. Free throws. We should not be the worst team in the NBA at free throws. We've been saying this for weeks, and it has bitten us in the butt. I saw the stat where it's like we had lost, or not. Again, it's all hypothetical because who knows if we would have, but had we made our free throws at a more consistent clip, we have lost 6 games where between 5 or more points in those games, we have missed 5 or more free throws. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, if we just make our freaking free throws, we would be in a much better position. Great teams win off of free throws. When we get to the playoffs, we need to make our free throws. And it's coming from everybody. And for like big men, you can excuse it a tiny bit, but our guards, like we're having Malik Monk, an 85% 8 free throw shooter, missed 2 key ones. Fox will miss 2 in a row, key ones. Kevin missed 2 key ones. HB missed 2 key ones. I'm like, guys, we cannot be doing this. So that's also something that I'm like, if we could just limit our turnovers in those key spots and make our free throws, I'm going to feel a lot better. But it's because of those things that we feel the way we do, because we're not losing the same way. It's not like we're playing at a super high level. We're making mistakes that teams that are high level shouldn't be making. So
agreed.
But, to finish off, I am confident in this team and what we can accomplish moving forward. You and I will be attending the Kings versus Pistons, trying to, secure a beam next Wednesday. So that'll be fun. And we'll definitely talk about that on the pod next week when we get the chance. But so hopefully they give us a win then. We picked an easy game, so hopefully it works out. But I feel fine. I don't feel great, but I feel fine. And it's still fun watching this team. It's also just like agonizing sometimes.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of fun in store. Hopefully, maybe next time we talk that they will have a different guy on this team. Maybe we have made some moves. We'll see. A lot's going to be happening over the next week here, so we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So this was episode 27 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on our social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook. Find us on YouTube. Go ahead, give us a like, subscribe, and a follow if you haven't already, if you like seeing our faces on YouTube. And I'm Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is
Benny the Jet Rats, baby.
Yes, sir. And again, bang, bang, Niner gang. Congratulations on making the Super Bowl. It has to be feeling good. And we're definitely going to get in depth on that next week. So,
yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.